Chilean needlegrass is a major threat to pastoral farming on the east coast of New Zealand.
If you see a sheep with it in, it'll penetrate right through the hide and also penetrate into a cattle beast's hide. And as you well know, once it gets into the hide of an animal, that animal is deemed useless.
You only have to jump into a pen of sheep, particularly with a pair of shorts on, and you'll get it stuck in your legs. Put your hand down on the ground in summer, it'll get stuck in your hands. And to get it out, like, you have to physically pull pretty hard to get her out. Pair of pliers, I've pulled her out with pliers before when you're crushing sheep in bits and pieces. Yeah, no, it's nasty.
First identified in Marlborough in the 1930s, Chilean needlegrass has now made about 2,500 hectares there useless for sheep farming. It's invasive and unpalatable to stock while seeding, but the real problem is its needle-like seeds.
So this, what you can see here, is the typical open panicle, which has got around about 25 to 30 spikelets. So these are the units that make up the panicle. So each of these spikelets is made up of two purple-coloured glooms, which are really very distinctive in this grass and pretty diagnostic. And inside each of these spikelets is one flower or one floret. And this floret, at this stage, this is at the pollination stage, and at the moment we can see the long tail of the floret, and it also comes out with a very, very sharp point as it detaches from the parent plant or from the spikelet. There are backward pointing hairs all the way along the awn. So the seed will get very easily lodged in the fleece of a sheep. It'll be dry when it arrives there, and the awn will be tightly wound up. But during wet weather conditions, this awn will start to unravel, and the kink in the awn will act as a ratchet and catch the awn in the fleece. But the seed will keep drilling, and it'll do up to 25 revolutions. It can't come back out because of the backward pointing hair, so it keeps drilling in through the fleece. And when dry weather comes along again, it starts to lose moisture and it revolves back the other way, up to 25 revolutions, but the seed keeps going in. And so with wetting and drying, basically this drill is going, corkscrewing its way through the fleece, and eventually it'll hit the skin, and it doesn't stop there. The end of the seed is so sharp that this mechanism will drive the seed right through the fleece and into the underlying muscle. So that really is the nub of the problem with Chilean needlegrass, and that is that it drills right through fleeces and into the muscle. So the pelts become worthless because an animal might have several thousand of these seeds in its fleece, in its pelt, and it'll have lesions in the underlying muscle that have to be trimmed out of the carcass. So so the fleeces are typically worthless, and the carcasses are downgraded because they need to be trimmed. Chilean needlegrass produces typically half of its seed every year in these open panicles that are very readily seen, and the other half are produced hidden inside the leaf sheaths. So at every node down the flower stem there's a leaf, and inside that leaf sheath there'll be a hidden or cleistogamous series of cleistogamous florets. These florets self-pollinate, so these seeds produced in these spikelets become viable and eventually enter the soil as the stem breaks down, and they contribute to the population growth of this plant just as much as the seeds from the open panicles.
A native of South America, Chilean needlegrass's first foothold in New Zealand was at Blind River in Marlborough, probably coming here in grass seed imported from Australia. For the next 60 years it spread very slowly in that region, but in 1962 it also turned up in Hawke's Bay. Plants have also been identified in the Auckland region. Chilean needlegrass was first found in North Canterbury in 2008, when it was found at Spotswood near Cheviot. Since then it's been found in 14 more North Canterbury sites. With much of the South Island's east coast climatically suitable to needlegrass, the fear is it could spread further.
Because Chilean needlegrass affects quite a large area in Marlborough, and the land that it does infest is very similar to a lot of the land we've got in Canterbury, it only made sense that eventually, knowing some of the pathways that Chilean needlegrass can travel on, would come to Canterbury. So we had a surveillance program over probably 7 or 8 years before we actually found Chilean needlegrass in Canterbury, looking at the most at-risk areas. The biggest threat that I can see Chilean needlegrass poses is the animal health risks because of the sharp needle-like seed, and also the change in farming practices would have quite a severe impact on some of our particularly harder hill country in Canterbury. So it would require areas to either be destocked or if you're going to control Chilean needlegrass in those areas, there's quite a considerable cost.
Environment Canterbury is now working with landowners to stop the spread of needlegrass. But in Marlborough, the battle has been going on much longer.
It's definitely been a game of containment, trying to make sure that it doesn't establish through any other areas of Marlborough. Which is it's a tough game given the nature of this weed. It's a very tough weed to control. We have had an extra, I guess, about 200 hectares found over the last 7 or 8 years, so it is spreading, and I guess we are hoping to try and slow that spread and work towards keeping it in this one core area here at least.
This vineyard and pastoral block is in the heart of the Blind River core CNG area.
About six years ago we came here. It was a core property of needlegrass, just solid wall to wall, which didn't do much for us, but we're looking at doing the vineyard operation, and all the remaining outside bits sort of got neglected over the last probably 4 or 5 years, I suppose, and just sort of left to it. It didn't do much for me, even from a farming background. Performance-wise, it's probably got the dry matter value of cardboard. Just stock-wise, getting into the sheep, got to be shorn in sort of early November, end of October. There's still that risk, and it's getting into the pelts and lamb carcasses, and it's just not good at all.
Hawke's Bay, while it doesn't have as big an area affected as Marlborough, is also battling needlegrass.
Well, my father found it back in 1985, 86. And was concerned about the way the cows wouldn't graze it. So that was one of the first issues. And then took it to the regional council, and finally it was identified as Chilean needlegrass. So they gave us some ideas about how to battle this grass, and we started a routine spraying with knapsacks mainly, but some gunning because it's quite steep country. This isn't steep, but most of the farm is a lot steeper than that. And spent 10 years battling it with glyphosate. Obviously pulse and Gol or simazine, which is a residual chemical, and came to the conclusion after 10 years of battling it with that we're just making the patches a lot bigger and having a bigger infestation than what we actually started with. So we decided at that point that we would leave it alone and just control the boundaries, which seemed to be okay with the regional council at that stage, and it still is. And then we started using a different fertiliser mix, not really to control Chilean needlegrass, but actually just because it was too expensive. When we started using dicalcic fertiliser, it was too expensive to use anything else. So we ended up by getting a wonderful effect with the palatability of our sward was improved immensely, and the rat's tail and all those native grasses didn't disappear, but they became more palatable. So we ended up with a very green effect to our farm rather than having a lot of rank grass that wouldn't be eaten. So after 10 years we ended up by having a face like this, which is grazable right through till it starts to go to seed, and then we have a 3-month hiatus where we don't try and force stock onto a face like that when it's covered in panicle seeds, and we work our farming regime around that.
For much of the year, Chilean needlegrass is difficult to distinguish from other pasture species, but it is more easily identifiable in spring and summer due to its purplish flowers. However, to the trained eye, it has distinctive features.
The Chilean needlegrass leaves on the edge towards the base are very rough, so you'll feel this roughness in your fingers as you do this. So that's one test. Some other grasses have this, and of course Narcella tussock does as well, so it's not a test on its own. The two features that are diagnostic for Chilean needlegrass at the collar zone, that is where the leaf joins the stem, there are a set of hairs either side of the leaf, and they're very stiff and they point upwards. And it also has what we call a membranous ligule, which is a sort of a small amount of tissue that runs around the base of the leaf. It's just an opaque membrane that basically joins the leaf onto the stem. So those two characteristics combine with the roughness of the base, the bottom part of the leaf along the edges of the leaf. If you've got those characteristics, you may well have Chilean needlegrass.
In North Canterbury, the threatening weed was first found at Spotswood near Cheviot on Mount Beautiful Vineyard.
One of the biosecurity guys came and decided to check one of the banks on the vineyard here, being a possible site because it's normally north-facing sunny banks where they grow, and there it was. So since then, it's been pretty much contain what's going on in here and try and do something about it.
Since that find in 2008, CNG has been found on 14 more North Canterbury properties, one of the worst affected being a hill country farm on Leader Road.
You just got to be careful, you just got to plan things a wee bit differently, and things that are going off the property to someone else's farm, you've just got to be really careful about. You know, in the summertime you can't put them anywhere near it, and anything I think that's going to be killed is alright. Lambs that'll be killed they'll be put on the that needlegrass area, which is in Lucerne now. But yeah, you just got to be careful of what vehicles you take through and keep an eye on them, clean them. Just lock the gate in the summer, and just so you don't get people going in there and driving around. Not that you probably would, but it's just a precaution sort of thing.
A committee of landowners, Environment Canterbury staff and scientists has been formed to coordinate efforts to eradicate or contain needlegrass in North Canterbury.
Really what we're relying on now is the local landowners and the community to get a really good understanding of what that plant looks like, so they can notify us, notify the council, and we can then combat any new outbreaks that may occur. And ECAN is particularly determined from the council is right down to the grassroots level to eradicate it, and that's where we're, as a community, are right in behind supporting them. So we would like to think that the farmers, if they ever think that possibly there's a plant that they may not recognise, to notify someone as soon as possible.
There's now a new weapon in the fight against Chilean needlegrass, a selective herbicide called Task Force. Made from a chemical called flupropionate sodium, Task Force kills CNG and the related Narcella tussock and remains active for up to 5 years.
I think it's a very useful tool. I think it's early days in New Zealand yet to know if it's going to be the silver bullet. I don't think anybody should put Task Force herbicide on without looking at an overall program to try and control Chilean needlegrass. So it really needs to be a management plan in terms of pasture renewal in particular after Task Force application.
On one Hawke's Bay farm, a trial of Task Force's effectiveness is being run.
To my left is a unsprayed strip. You can pretty much see that it's pretty much mainly Chilean needlegrass. There is a sprinkling of native grasses growing in there, but the Chilean needlegrass has certainly dominated it. And to my right is a strip where Task Force was applied, and you can see that it's pretty much taken all the Chilean needlegrass out, and you're seeing native grasses, a little bit of ryegrass, stalkspill, a few thistles which have all sort of come back into the pasture. There would have been seed sitting in the ground. And over the next 2 to 3 years, the farmer will monitor these strips, and hopefully we'll see very little Chilean needlegrass come back into these sprayed strips over the next 2 to 3 years.
On the Leader Road farm in North Canterbury, Task Force has also been used, and now lucerne has been sown in place of the needlegrass-infested pasture. In Marlborough, Tim Struthers is enthusiastic about the results achieved with Task Force.
We've put in probably 60 hectares done now with aerial, and fenced it up and water on it, and yeah, where we weren't running bugger all before, we've probably got about 250 odd cattle on now. So, and yeah, that's sort of funding the rest of the place.
But while Task Force offers new hope in the fight against Chilean needlegrass, it is yet to be proven, and other measures are needed to prevent the nasty weed from spreading. Sheep which have grazed infested pastures are likely to be carrying seeds and should not be sold to other farmers. They should only go off farm to be killed. The other big risk is seed carried from farm to farm on machinery, so it needs to be washed down with a high-pressure hose before leaving.
There's a lot of different people move about farms throughout New Zealand, and you've got everything from biosecurity officers through to shearers and all sorts of different contractors coming on and off properties, and they can all be a potential risk to spreading any pest or organism. So there needs to be a check at the front gate, basically.
Waipara farmer Graham Uren has fought Narcella tussock all his farming career, and with Chilean needlegrass now found only a farm away, he's worried about this new threat.
As long as you grub each year, annually, we're able to control Narcella. This CNG, from what I see on Carl's place and in the vineyard at Spotswood, is a different proposition altogether. I've already started doing what I think are simple things. I've locked a couple of boundary gates so as the water scheme service vehicles and pylon people, up until now they've been accessing the back of my property without asking or whatever. Not there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm standing beside a gate which at the moment no vehicles go through without being either inspected or asked or whatever. It's about people are going to have to start and communicate, and you cannot just access properties now without asking and finding out where we're at. And I dread the thought that we're going to have to wash down here and all that sort of thing, but there are some simple things that I can do to help myself in the meantime.
The best way to stop Chilean needlegrass from spreading is for landowners to take responsibility and to adopt the mantra, biosecurity starts at the front gate. They should take the time to learn what CNG looks like and understand the ways in which it can be spread. Vectors can include people, stock, farm vehicles and machinery, and hay. Have a plan and take action. Put up signs, lock gates if necessary, and make a point of finding out where visitors have come from, and be prepared to inspect their vehicles. Visitors to farms should follow the same rules and make sure they don't unwittingly spread this potentially devastating weed.